So here we are at the orchard of the Future block on Mill Creek, and we're having a very uneven response with our buds growing, as I've talked about in other videos. So what we're doing is these guys are going in anywhere where there's less than 2 feet of shoot extension. We're spraying, or we're not spraying rather, but we're applying a drench to those trees to stimulate the tree growth, stimulate the biology, provide nutrition. The hopes is that we can individually stimulate these trees, because we don't want to have, say, this tree here that you can see the shoot growing really tall on. If we fertigate or foliar spray, those weaker trees there are going to respond, but this tree here is going to over respond, and it already has a shoot that's 4 feet tall, and these other trees have no shoots. It's a big challenge. So the other thing we're doing is we're providing foliar feeds on these trees. We just have a tractor set up with a single nozzle, and every tree receives the same foliar treatment because it's very difficult for us to turn on and off. But we might change that. So this tree is typical of what we unfortunately have a lot of. A majority of the trees are in this situation in this block. So we've gone in, we've reduced the canopy size. We've pruned the canopy back in hopes of getting the scion bud to break. We've been putting individual drenches on in hopes of stimulating the tree with enough energy that it will grow. And what we see is the following challenge. You can see that this tree has been pruned back very hard. It's had essentially its entire canopy removed. It was a big canopy tree like these here. We've come in and we've pruned these trees back really hard, and you can see that produced a lot of this shoot extension. All these are brand new shoots that are growing out of this tree. We had a big response with the rootstock, but look at the scion right here. The scion is not doing a darn thing. The leaves of the scion look really healthy. You can see that it's just formed a non-fruiting spur. Sorry about the light. It's just formed a non-fruiting spur and hasn't done anything else. So we pruned this back, and we had this massive canopy expansion because we essentially pruned this back to only one little branch here. We've had all these buds break, but the scion hasn't done anything. So the question is, how do we get this scion bud to break this season and get the growth that we need here? All right, so let's look at a tree, which unfortunately we don't have more of these, but let's look at a tree that we pruned back really heavy and see a different response. So this tree was pruned back very heavy. We pruned essentially everything but one little shoot off of the canopy. And you can see this is all these shoots. A majority of these shoots are just rootstock extension, and so this shoot here is about between 2 and 3 feet long, and that's all brand new. It just blue new shoots. Same with these here. But here you can see this is the scion shoot. It actually broke. So here we have the scion shoot right here, and it actually broke, and it's grown in just the last week or two, or last couple of weeks. I don't know the dates on that. It's actually grown about 12 inches, maybe a little longer than 12 inches. So here was the neighbor that we just looked at that isn't breaking. And this shoot broke. But what I see here is that this tree has more vigor. It's produced stronger shoots off the rootstock than its neighbor here. And so I don't know if it's a question of vigor or if it's a question of hormones, probably a combination of many things. But this tree did what we needed to do when we hit it hard. This tree hasn't. We just need to figure out why. This is the chicken house orchard. And at this orchard, we did scoring above the scion about 2 weeks ago or so. Now, maybe a little less. So what we did is these trees were pruned back hard. And then we came in and we actually scored. This is going to be a rough looking one because we did this one first. We actually scored above the scion bud here. And this one just got tore up a bit because we were just using my pocket knife. But I want you to see that this is now starting to have, if I can get it in focus, we're now starting to have a response here above this bud. And if we come down here to another tree, you can see that we also did some ugly scoring here. We scored above the scion, and we have a break now here. So we're going to try that on all blocks. We covered all the chicken house block. We didn't cover all of the Mill Creek block. We only did part of it just to see what the effect is, and it looks like it's working for us. These are just two examples of a lot of the trees, and so I like what we're seeing here. Okay, so we'll close with some positive news. So this is a tree that was pruned back very heavy, and it had one of the buds that I've talked about in previous videos that looked it didn't even look like a normal bud. That was the response that it was growing. Some folks thought they were floral buds, which they aren't. They just were really weird buds, and we think it's because of glyphosate effects. So what you can see is we pruned this tree back really, really heavy, and in fact, we actually ended up, because we thought that this bud was going to die on here, we actually ended up on this tree grafting this spring a replacement bud onto the tree. So this had a really ugly bud on it. We put a replacement bud on the tree this spring, and that replacement bud desiccated and died. We had a poor take, less than half of those buds. But this is very interesting. So you can see, prune this back heavy, but this shoot here is the response that we gained in this tree. So this ugly bud that we thought was going to die and wasn't going to work, and only had two little leaves. It only had two little leaves sticking out of it, and that was it. It actually ended up blowing a shoot here that comes up to here. So this had not even formed a spur. It had only had just two little leaves sticking out, and that was it. And what we see here is, after the work that we've done, we have a response here in this tree, which is really positive news. The question is, how do we get more trees to respond like this one? And that's why I'm making these. So here's another tree where we had a non-fruiting spur form, which is what we would expect, but we wanted it to break into a shoot, and it started to grow as a shoot, and it grew about 1 inch long. And so we pruned back this canopy very hard, and you can see the top growth here is all new. But if we look down here at this bud, at this, non-fruiting spur, we can actually see where this growth right here is starting anew. So we're actually growing this spur grows a spur. We got it to break a little bit. It grew maybe 1/2 inch to 1 inch, and then now it stopped, and now we're able to get it pushing again, which is really good news, because we had a lot of buds in this spurs rather, in this situation where they started to grow a little bit, they started to break a little bit, they grew 1 inch, maybe a little less, and then they stopped again and set a terminal bud. And here this bud is getting to break. So that gives me good hope that we are able to get these to grow again. We just need to figure out how.